Okay, it is 1:30. Today is November 21st, 2023. This is the Chartered Clubs Committee RR&P meeting. And we will start with the Pledge of Allegiance. So if you all stand and join me, please. Okay, we have two committee members absent today, excused absences, but we still have a quorum, so we will go ahead and move forward. The first item of business is to approve the meeting minutes of November 7th. Does anybody have any changes, additions, updates? Okay, seeing none, they will be accepted as written. Okay, the first piece of business on our RR&P review is to go back to a clarification that was made in Article 4. It was statement 1.1.3. This was in regard to food and beverage being part of a club activity. The previous statement said food and beverage may or may not be part of the club activity, but the club activity may not be catered. That was correctly pointed out as being confusing and incomplete, so the committee came up with replacement text that feels better. I will read that. Food and or beverage may or may not be part of a club activity. This food and or beverage can be funded by the club and served by the club members, prepared and provided by individual club members, carried in from outside vendors by individual club members, or delivered but not served by an outside vendor, for example, pizza delivery, or any combination of the preceding. However, a club activity cannot have contracted caterers that cook, heat, otherwise prepare, and or serve food on the premises. Food and beverages catered in that manner require that the club treat the activity as a special event. And there's a reference to the second paragraph down, section 1.2, paragraph 1.2, Charter Club Special Event. So hopefully that has cleared up that, and it also documents the way that the current practices were being handled as well. So that's a good thing. And with that, we will move to Article 5, which is the first one on our agenda today. Okay, Article 5 is about disciplinary actions. In the current RR&Ps, the disciplinary actions were embedded in membership. However, over the course of several years, it's been found that the current disciplinary actions were insufficient. One of the reasons that I say they're insufficient is that if a club violated an RR&P or their own bylaws, the only tool that the rec centers had for discipline was to revoke their charter. And that was not always commensurate with the violation. So what the committee has done here is taken the format of the member discipline with all of the procedures and all of that and come up with two other types of discipline. So in addition to member discipline, there will be club officer discipline, and there will be club discipline as well. And I'll go through each of those in order here. So Article 5, disciplinary actions, Section 1, member discipline. Discipline of a club member is necessary when chartered club bylaws or RR&Ps have been violated, individuals have threatened the safety of themselves or others, individuals are abusive or create turmoil, disruption, or dissension among club members, between clubs, or the association. Individuals are abusive to association staff or management. That is a new statement. And when the actions of a member are deemed by the association to be detrimental to the association's reputation, standing, status, etc. 1.2, a formal written complaint in the form of an email or a written or typed page must be filed by the complainant to initiate a disciplinary action. Verbal complaints shall not be accepted by the chartered club board. The complainant must sign the complaint. Anonymous complaints will not be accepted by the chartered club board. Chartered club committee. Oh, the chartered club board, sorry. That refers to the board of the chartered club. Any club member may submit a formal complaint as described above. 1.5, all complaints must be submitted in a timely manner within 48 hours of the incident. Complaints submitted more than 48 hours following the incident are subject to being unacceptable at the discretion of the chartered club board. The formal complaint must be submitted to the entire chartered club board at the same time. That is, not just one person, but to everybody on the board. Formal written complaint must include the following minimum information and relevant details describing the reasons for the complaint: the name, recreation card number, and club membership status of the complainant, name of the party or parties against whom the complaint is being raised. So the first one is the person who's making the complaint. Second one is the person or persons who the complaint is against, the date of the incident, the location of the incident, description of the incident, detailed description, and any names of witnesses to the incident. The entire chartered club board shall determine the proper course of action upon receipt of a formal written complaint. 1.9, the recreation manager must be notified that a formal complaint has been received. The recreation manager will advise the club as to next steps. So when there is a complaint, the recreation manager is there to advise and to guide the club. 1.11, all disciplinary actions must be initiated and approved by the club board in confidential executive session by a majority vote of 51%. Voting results must be recorded in meeting minutes by the club secretary and retained in the club's confidential files. So there's going to be no more somebody just makes an edict and, on the spur of a moment dismisses a member from the club. That kind of thing is, not going to happen anymore, should not happen anymore. The member must be notified within 5 business days of the infraction. The infraction and the actions must be documented in club records, including Form CR16, which is the Chartered Club Disciplinary Actions Form, and copies forwarded to the Recreation Manager and Chartered Clubs Committee Chair. Any questions or concerns regarding the member disciplinary process must be directed to the Recreation Manager. Disciplinary procedures. All disciplinary procedures must be documented and retained in confidential club records. The first occurrence, the verbal warning to the member from the club president and a board member sharing details of the incident and violation. So again, it's not one-on-one, it's 2 officers or 2 board members talking to the member who's being warned. The warning must be delivered with the message that this is a verbal warning. It is the first in a step in a multi-step process, and there will only be one verbal warning. For the second occurrence, written warning from the club board documenting the details of the incident and violation. Subsequent occurrences, written notice from the club board of temporary club suspension, a maximum of 2 weeks. All suspensions must be reported to the general manager within 2 business days of the action being taken per association by law. Article 8, Charter Clubs, Section 8.02, Membership, Paragraph 8.2.2. The member may appeal a suspension with written notice to the club board, the recreation manager, and Chartered Clubs Committee Chair. The appeal will pause suspension until a ruling. Member rights and privileges continue until the ruling is complete. The general manager, having received appropriate notification from the recreation manager, may continue suspension until the appeal is heard. The appeal is heard at a scheduled meeting with the recreation manager, charter club's committee chair, and other individuals approved by the recreation manager. The member in question and club president or presiding officers present their respective case. The ruling will be made based on majority consensus after the member has left the room. The recreation manager will forward the appeal ruling to the club board and member. The member may appeal by the ruling, again, so this is a second appeal they can have, by written notice to the recreation manager requesting a hearing with the governing board with Form CR 16A procedure. The request will be forwarded to the general manager. Further disciplinary action requests by a club board are forwarded to the general manager by the recreation manager with a copy of the disciplinary actions taken to date. The general manager may suspend the member from club activities for up to 60 days. Club member termination may be recommended by the general manager to the governing board. Severe cases of adverse club member behavior may be cause for suspension of association membership rights and privileges. That is, suspension of the association recreation card. Any suspension of termination of club membership or association rights and privileges may be recommended to the governing board by the general manager following the same process of revocation procedures as described in Association Policy M02, Section Membership, title Suspension of Membership, after completion of the procedures listed above. So these should all be fairly familiar. These are pretty much, except for some grammatical changes, the current rules in the current RR&Ps. There's a special category for safety discipline. If an individual cannot or will not comply with the stated operating procedures, or in the judgment of the club's board, cannot safely operate or use equipment, the club board may suspend all or part of their privileges relating to the use of said equipment. Before making such a decision, however, clubs should make a reasonable effort to provide additional training instruction in hopes of requalifying an individual to use said equipment. In most cases, a suspension of operating privileges will not be considered disciplinary in nature and will only be activated to protect the best interests of the individual, club, and the association. Any suspension of privileges based on safety concerns may be appealed to the recreation manager. The appeal process is as described above in Section 1, Member Discipline, paragraph 1.12.5, page 38. Infractions immediately addressed and corrected do not require further action or documentation. Infractions which may result in legal involvement, for example, physical altercation, will move directly to the general manager for recommendation to the governing board. The governing board may accept all reports and testimony as true per membership policy M02, suspension of membership, paragraph 3.2.1. Any questions on club member discipline? Any questions? Yeah, Maria.
I have some. So if I go back to 1.2 and then sub-bullet, the complainant must sign the complaint. Anonymous complaints will not be accepted by the chartered club, club board, or chartered club or committee. Just clarification on that
I think, it's charter club board. The word board is 2 lines below it. I didn't see it.
Oh, thank you. Okay. And then my next question, it sounds like for disciplinary procedure, according to 1.12.2, a first occurrence is always a verbal. But then as we're reading, it sounds like it's not always a verbal. It will depend on how severe the infraction was. But I don't read that when I'm reading this. I kind of could say, well, it was my first occurrence, even though I smacked Nick. It was my first occurrence, so I should just get a verbal. not smack you. I was just saying, and so could we have a line in here, maybe just for clarification, that says, this is the, more or less, the process goes this way, verbal, written, whatever, but there are situations where it could jump and it could go advanced to, let's say, termination based on the severity of the infraction?
I think what we're trying to, and you guys correct me if I'm wrong, but I think what we're trying to do here is to create a process, or this is actually the same process that's been in place for quite a while, but it's a process that will handle 99% of those situations.
Okay.
And to make a process that will handle every possible permutation, would end up with a document, 6 times as long as we've already got. The other thing too is the first step also involves going to the recreation manager, right, Casey?
Yeah, and if we feel it needs to be taken further, it would do so then.
And I agree. I agree, that's why I was saying, you just may want to put a bullet in there that at the discretion, you can always advance to different stages based on the severity.
I'm good with that.
Committee?
1.14 says infractions which result in legal involvement, physical altercation will move directly to the general manager for recommendation.
Okay.
So that's in the very last paragraph.
So can you lean in and?
I'm sorry. So the very last paragraph, 1.14, it says infractions which result in legal involvement, that is physical altercation, will move directly to the general manager for recommendation to the governing board. So does that not cover?
I would add another line, because it just sounds like if it was a physical altercation, but it could be something else that is not necessarily physical. And it's just for, if you guys want to do it as clarification, that's all.
What would be an example of that?
You're wanting it to be moved up earlier in the bullet points, I think is what she's referring to. It's just a little too far down.
And it's
okay.
and it's just to clarify, just to say, although this is 90% of the time it happens, we don't want people to think we always follow that. Just to be very clear, it depends on what the infraction was.
Okay, so move the second sentence from 1.14 up to let's see, it would be an end of the discipline. Yeah. Under 1.12.2. So, Maria, does that, if we move the second sentence of 1.14 up to 1.12.2?
Yeah, I think it belongs in that area, but is it only just for clarification here? Because it's lost. If 1.14 says infractions immediately addressed and corrected do not require further action or documentation. And then in the same sentence, infractions which result in legal involvement, physical altercation, like a physical altercation will move. But what if it doesn't involve legal involvement? It's just severe, but you don't need an attorney on it. Would you still follow the 90% of the time, or only in that case?
If there's attorneys, that goes a little bit further. It no longer is really documented through the club. It'll be through the association, and if asked it to the governing board, then that'll move forward.
Right, and that's why I'm saying I read it as infractions which result in legal involvement will move directly to the general manager. That's good. I'm not saying it's bad. I'm just saying that's the only time you guys will make a decision that goes outside of the 90% of the time that goes verbal, written, final written,
Yes,
termination.
because the severity is putting the members at risk. It's no longer a club issue. So if something happens within a club and puts the members at risk, then that becomes our problem. But if it's me telling Nick, your bad behavior is offensive to Jill Smith over there, we're going to have to give you a verbal warning, and he continues to do so, then we take the second offense.
No, I have a very long HR background is why I'm bringing this up. And you just don't want to get caught up in that standard every time it's a verbal and then it goes to a written. There's also a time frame that I don't see.
I was gonna ask about that, Jack. How long, it's never been explained in the CR-16s how long that verbal warning is good for. Does that make sense? So sorry, Nick, you're, you're the guinea pig. If Nick has a verbal warning in January, and then he's on his best behavior, and then come November 3rd, is that still counted for that year? Is it a calendar year? You know what I mean?
It's his permanent record.
Okay, I think that needs to be mentioned in here then, because that is a very, very common occurrence, and it's been a difficult, not many times has this happened with the same individual, but it has.
Okay. Yeah, so those who have a history, if you will. Okay, so we've got one change to move the second sentence of 1.14 up to 1.12.2, and then we need to put in a notation somewhere in here that says that whatever the disciplines are cumulative and they never go away or something to that effect. Yeah, it's your permanent record. Your parents told you you'd have a permanent record. Little did you know.
You know,
Yes, you're going to get one verbal warning, but yeah. Yeah, so if for those on the video, her point is that there's a statement in there that says they get one verbal warning. And that is correct. So, but I think, to Maria's and Casey's point, there have been instances where people say, well, that was for this infraction, and I get another verbal warning for this infraction and this infraction. And I think that we do need to make that clearer. We'll put it in there somewhere. We'll figure it out.
Jack, I don't disagree with Maria, though, that there should still be one sentence for the in-between the legal and the first offense. You know, that it could escalate farther, bypassing the steps if necessary.
Okay, everybody else, what's everybody else feel?
I agree with that.
Say head shaking. Okay, so we'll add something to that effect, that there could be an expedited step. I mean, I think the goal of the original disciplinary action was to try to solve it at the club level. But I think what you guys are describing is the fact that sometimes it accelerates beyond the club level. Okay. The voice of experience up here. Okay, anything else on member? Yeah, Paul.
Yes, on under 1.7, it details all the information that's needed to document the complaint. And then over on 1.12.23 and 4, it talks about subsequent occurrences, but it doesn't really say what information is needed for that. Let's take a case of verbal abuse of one particular member. That gets reported first offense. And let's say the second occurrence happens somewhere else, some different person is affected, et cetera. We don't really say that for a second offense or a second occurrence that same documentation is needed, or any documentation, to document that. And I could just see where there would be two different sets of, or different victim involved in different circumstances for each violation. So I don't know, it would perhaps just a sentence saying the documentation under 1.7 needs to be included for any subsequent occurrences.
Could we say something like all complaints must be accompanied, must be written in a formal complaint with this information, something like that?
Yeah, yeah.
Jack, presumably somebody has been verbally abusive, had a verbal warning, and then if they're verbally abusive to somebody else later on, that second person will be putting in a formal complaint under number 1, so they'll come to all of the list on 1.7.
Yep, but it doesn't really say any documentation is required for the second or subsequent offense, so.
No, well, the second offence must come from a formal complaint, and the formal complaint says you need to have all of that information.
Yeah, I just think we need to say that any subsequent occurrence requires the same documentation as the initial.
So I don't see any harm in saying that all complaints must be presented in the form of a formal complaint.
Yeah.
I think that's fair.
Can I ask one more question? Yeah. 1.12.1, all disciplinary procedures must be documented and retained in confidential club records for how long? Is that written somewhere?
There is a section on club records that we'll go over next month. Okay, anything else? That's good. Okay, let's go to...
Chad, just one more question, sorry.
Yeah.
So I just want to play a scenario. I belong to the, I don't know, Creative Stitchers, all right? And I hit Nick there, and I didn't do well. I got kicked out of the Creative Stitchers. And then I'm going to go to knitting. So I'm going to be a new member in a knitting club. Do they need to know that I had disciplinary action from Creative Stitchers? Just a question.
Speaking personally, I don't believe they do. I mean, your incident was with that club and that incident. That's my opinion.
Okay.
I'm one person.
I will say if it gets down to that level, it depends upon the severity, if you even have access to the rec centers itself too. Because it could be even bigger if it was something along those lines.
Yeah, and that's my fear, right? If you're just going to take a problem and move them over, it's still a problem for that club and the people in it, and we don't want to put anybody in harm's way or anything like that. Even just for being mistreated, for talking bad or derogatory to somebody in another club, you don't want another club to experience that either.
And I think to Casey's point that the rec manager will know all of this and be aware of it, so that'll be the central record-keeping point. And I think, too, I'm going to have to separate you and Nick. Because yeah. Okay, anything else? Okay, club officer discipline. Section 2 of Article 5. Club officers are held to a high standard of behavior as they are elected as club representatives and shall conduct themselves in a professional, socially acceptable, and responsible manner as a club officer. Chartered club officers shall comply with and enforce association governing documents, especially chartered club bylaws and the RR&Ps. The discipline of a club officer is necessary when the chartered club bylaws or RR&Ps have been violated, individuals have threatened the safety of themselves or others, and individuals are abusive or create turmoil, disruption, or dissension among club members, between clubs, or the association. You'll see a theme throughout all of these. Individuals, let's see here, we took all of the special events, all that out of there. Hard reading this red line. Individuals, when the actions of a charter club officer are deemed by the association to be detrimental, I think we did that one already. We'll get that fixed if it is. It's hard reading the red line here. Okay, 2.1, initiating the club officer discipline. Disciplinary procedures against a chartered club officer may be initiated under one of two conditions: by the chartered club board or by the association manager. So, chartered club officer disciplinary actions initiated by the club's board. All disciplinary actions must be approved by club board officers meeting privately in executive session, majority vote of 51% or higher. The officer in question must abstain from voting. Voting results must be recorded in meeting minutes by the club secretary and retained in the club's confidential files. The officer or officers subject to discipline must be notified by the club's board within 5 business days of the decision to initiate disciplinary action. The infractions and actions must be documented in confidential club records, including Form CR-16, the Chartered Club's Disciplinary Actions Form, with copies forwarded to the Recreation Manager and Chartered Club's Committee Chair. Any questions or concerns regarding the Chartered Club Officer disciplinary process must be directed to the Recreation Manager. So the Chartered Club Officer disciplinary procedures. First occurrence, verbal warning to the Chartered Club Officer from the club president or the vice president if the officer in question is the club president, and a board member sharing details of the incidents and violations. The warning must be delivered with a message that this is a verbal warning, is the first step in a multi-step process, and there will only be one verbal warning. Second occurrence, written warnings from the club board documenting the details of the incidents and violations. Subsequent occurrences, written notice, those are all footnotes, they should be superscripted. Written notice from the club board of temporary suspension from the club will be provided within 48 hours of disciplinary action being decided. Second and subsequent occurrences begin accumulating from the date of the first disciplinary action, regardless of any intermediary corrective actions or accommodations. The Chartered Club officers may appeal a disciplinary ruling by submitting Form CR-16A, Governing Board Hearing, to the Recreation Manager. The request will be forwarded to the General Manager. Further disciplinary action requests by the club board will be forwarded to the General Manager by the Recreation Manager with a copy to the disciplinary actions to date. An appeal will not pause any suspension until a ruling is issued. This is different than for a member. And this is because if a club officer is being disciplined, we don't want that club officer still being in a position of authority that may wreak havoc against a club. Officer rights and privileges shall be suspended during the appeal process. The appeal will be heard at a scheduled meeting with the Recreation Manager, the Chartered Club's Committee Chair, and other individuals approved by the Recreation Manager. The Chartered Club Board may be witnesses, but not members of the appeal board as they initiated the disciplinary process. The officer or officers being disciplined shall present their case. The ruling will be made based on majority consensus after the officer has left the room. The General Manager may suspend the officer from club activities for up to 60 days. Club officer termination or suspension of more than 60 days may be recommended by the General Manager to the Governing Board. Severe cases of adverse Chartered Club officer behavior may be cause for suspension of association membership rights and privileges. That is, the suspension of the association recreation card. The Recreation Manager will forward the appeal ruling to the club board and officer. Any suspension or termination of club membership or association rights and privileges may be recommended to the Governing Board by the General Manager following the same process of revocation procedures as described in Policy M02, Section Membership, Title Suspension of Membership, after completion of procedures listed above. And there's the removal of club officers by the club board. So there's the disciplining of them, then there's the removal, if that's appropriate. Again, this is the process. Board members who hold offices, president, vice president, secretary, and treasurer, can be removed from their office and replaced by another board member by board action without a vote of the membership. The meeting must be a confidential executive session closed to the membership. The officer can be removed by motion and a vote of a majority, 51% of the board members at a meeting with cause. Voting results must be recorded in meeting minutes by the club secretary and retained in the club's confidential files. Key word here is cause. You can't remove an officer just because you don't like the clothes that they wear. But it has to be with cause, and cause is defined in the definitions up front of this document. The officer in question cannot vote on the motion. If removed, a motion can be made to fill the position with another board member. If that board member takes a new position, there will be another motion to fill a newly open vacancy, and so on. Now, club officers, another way to remove a club director is by the club members. The members of a chartered club's board, whether they or not they hold an officer position, are elected by the membership or sometimes replaced by the board if there is a vacancy, depending upon the club's bylaws. Therefore, they can be removed by a vote of the membership. To remove a member of a club board, 25% of the membership must sign a petition calling for the removal. The petition and removal must be with cause. After the signatures are verified by the club secretary, the board will call and hold a special membership meeting within 10 days. The removal will be voted on at that meeting. The board may fill the position for the remaining term unless club bylaws provide otherwise. The meeting for removal must have a quorum as set forth in the club bylaws, and removal requires a 2/3 vote of those attendants with a quorum. If the club's bylaws provide for methods of voting without meetings, for example, via technology, mail, etc., removal requires a 2/3 vote of all the club's members. Voting results must be recorded in meeting minutes by the club secretary and provided to the club membership. So the key distinction here is if there's a meeting in place and the membership has a quorum and 2/3 of that quorum vote to remove a club director, then you only need the quorum. However, if you're going to have a different medium for voting, that is via a computer, via mail, in-person vote, it's got to be 2/3 of the members, because presumably you can reach more people that way. So it's got to be more representative of the club membership. Other discipline for club officers and board members. Board members / officers are also subject to the same discipline as any club member. See Form CR16 in Section 1, Member Discipline, above on page 37. So that's the first type of club officer disciplinary action. The second one is initiated by the recreation manager. The recreation manager may initiate club disciplinary action of a chartered club officer if the officer's club is unable or unwilling to do so. So there must be a conversation between the recreation manager and that club, and if the club is not willing to do it, then the recreation manager has the option to initiate it. The officer subject to discipline must be notified within 5 business days of the decision to initiate disciplinary action. The infractions and actions must be documented in recreation manager records, including Form CR16, and copies forwarded to the officers involved, Chartered Club Board, General Manager, and Chartered Clubs Committee Chair. Chartered Club Officer Disciplinary Procedures. First occurrence, verbal warning to the Chartered Club Officer from the Recreation Manager sharing details of the incidents and violations. The warning must be delivered with the message that this is a verbal warning, is the first step in a multi-step process, and there will only be one verbal warning. Club officers must be notified in writing of the delivery of a verbal warning by the Recreation Manager. Second occurrence, written warning from the Recreation Manager to the involved officer documenting the details of the incidents and violations. Club officers must be notified in writing of the delivery of a verbal warning by the Recreation Manager. Subsequent occurrences. Written notice from the Recreation Manager of temporary suspension from the club will be provided to the involved officer within 48 hours of disciplinary action being decided. Club officers must be notified in writing of the delivery of a verbal warning by the recreation manager. Second and subsequent occurrences begin accumulating from the date of the first disciplinary action, regardless of any intermediary corrective actions or accommodations. The chartered club officer may appeal the ruling by submitting Form CR 16A to the recreation manager. The request will be forwarded to the general manager. Further disciplinary action requested by the recreation manager will be forwarded to the general manager with a copy of the disciplinary actions to date. An appeal will not pause any suspension until a ruling is issued. Officer rights and privileges shall be suspended during the appeal process for the same reasons as given above. The appeal will be heard at a scheduled meeting within 10 days with the recreation manager, the chartered clubs committee, the chartered club board, and other individuals approved by the recreation manager. The officer being disciplined shall present their case. The ruling will be made based on majority consensus after the officer has left the room. The recreation manager will forward the appeal ruling to club board and officer. The general manager may suspend the officer from club activities for no more than 60 days. Club officer termination or suspension of more than 60 days may be recommended by the general manager to the governing board. Severe cases of adverse chartered club officer behavior may be cause for suspension of association membership rights and privileges, that is, suspension of the association rec card. Any suspension or termination of club membership or association rights and privileges may be recommended to the governing board by the general manager following the same process of revocation procedures as described in Association Policy M02, suspension of membership after completion of procedures listed above. And other discipline, board members or officers are also subject to the same discipline as any club member. See Section 1, Member Discipline on page 37. Okay, that covers club officer discipline. Any questions, comments? Yes, I'm going to stop talking.
I just have one. It's just a minor point, but we say that the processes around the discipline of the club officer is to be recorded in minutes by the secretary. If the secretary is the one who's being disciplined, maybe we should add a sentence or add to that sentence saying or other officer as appointed by the president.
Yeah, I think that's good.
And the other one is, I think all the way through this, we talk about this being of officers and not generally board members. So this is just the president, vice president, treasury, and secretary.
Yes, that's what an officer is.
Yeah.
Is that?
Okay. No, I just wanted to make that clear. My final one as well is in 2.1.1.6, removal of club directors by club members. Does that refer to a board member or just officers?
So what it says here is removal of club directors, whereas the one above says club officers.
Yeah, my understanding of the terminology is that we have officers and we have board members. We don't have directors.
Oh, okay. We can change that.
I have a question in that same section, but it's 2.1.1.1. All disciplinary actions must be approved by club board officers, not the entire board. This is under club officer disciplinary actions initiated by the club's board. Should that not be the entire board?
You tell me.
I think it should.
So what paragraph number again is?
That's 2.1.1.1 on page 41. Under the header, 2.1.1, it says club officer disciplinary actions initiated by the club's board. The next line says all disciplinary actions must be approved by club board officers. If it's initiated by the club's board, then to me, the next sentence should not just be officers, it should be the entire board.
2.1.1.1.
Mm-hmm.
Initiated by the club's board.
Mm-hmm.
Page 41.
Right, page 41.
Be approved by the club officers meeting privately in executive session, that paragraph.
Yes.
The officer in question must abstain from voting. The voting results must be recorded in meeting minutes by the club's secretary and retained in the club's confidential files.
Okay, it's the very first line, because it says the header is club officer
Oh,
disciplinary
gotcha.
actions initiated by the club's board. But then it talks about must be approved by club board officers. Should it not be the entire board making that decision? Or the majority of the board?
So the disciplinary actions must be approved by the club officers. You want it to be the board?
Yeah,
Okay, I mean, is that,
no, there's 4 officers. There might
Four
be 7 or
officers.
9 board members.
yeah, Paul?
Shouldn't we, actually, item number 2, club, club officer discipline, should that not include board members? Club officer and board member discipline?
Well, I guess the question becomes, does the recreation center want to get into disciplining every member of a club board? We got 92 clubs and we've got hundreds and hundreds of people.
Yeah, I think the reason would be some of the other board members have significant responsibilities that affect the operation of the club, if not more so than the club officers. So, I
Casey?
don't know, it's just a question, really.
It'll interfere if we both have them on. So this kind of goes hand in hand because where you have club officer and then club director, which I know we're going to change. I'm not sure that we have to handle them differently. If we're going to just go to the club board, it's all handled within the board. And then that actually eliminates that whole other additional section of membership being involved. But I do agree, if there's only 4 board members, that's one thing, but then when you have other clubs that have 3 additional officers, then some are co's. I think we have some that have co's in here as well. How do we include them as well? So
That's addressed later on.
oh,
It all, whether, if you have the word co or whatever in front of your title, it still applies to you.
all right,
You're
just
still an officer.
for simplified questions, I'm just putting myself in the shoes of a director in this case right here, because it says director. I would rather be treated like a board member and have a private executive session for my removal, not in the front of the membership.
Okay, I mean, I don't see a problem with that, but I thought the question, okay, that's fine. I
But it
understand
would be
now.
the whole board.
Yeah, I understand. So
Okay.
it's the whole board. So wherever we say officer, wherever it says officer, it should reference board member. Is that fair? Yeah. Well, a club officer is a board member. So just say board member. So board member instead of or club board member instead of club board officer. And that's throughout. Section 5.
So would 2 say board member discipline as opposed to club officer discipline?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so that'll be throughout the entire section. So it'll be every possible board member. Okay. That's
I have a
good.
question.
Yep.
So on section 2.1.1.5 and then 2.1.1.6, when does that happen? Does the person being accused get to decide who's going to be the reviewer of the discipline or not? I just don't understand why it's there.
I didn't understand where you were going and what you were saying here.
Okay, so 2.1.1.5 and then 2.1.1.6. One is removal of club officers by club board, remover of club, I think we're going to change that, board by club members. Right? So I'm trying to understand, why would you have two different, so club members can vote out a board, or is it just, I'm confused because I don't have the experience back here.
The intent was, and you guys correct me if I'm wrong, the intent was to be able to remove a club officer by the board, and the other way of removing it is by the club membership.
Right, but which scenario would you pick and when?
If
For an incident.
So if a board of Club X, and you guys, this is my understanding, if a board of Club X has a recalcitrant member, an obstreperous member, then the board can remove that person by taking the action themselves. The person's behavior may not be visible, or their infraction may not be visible to the club membership. So they can take the actions to remove that. The other one, where the membership would remove it, is say, this person has, not working in the best interests of the club, or whatever the, for cause reason is, and they petition to have that board member removed.
So it sounds like the 2.1.1.5 is an incident that is not visible to all members, just the board.
No, it could be visible to the membership, but the board could take the action.
Okay, so just a stupid question, but let's say I'm that person and I don't like the board to review my discipline. I want the members of my club to review my discipline. I trust in them and not the board of that club. Hypothetical. Could I have that choice?
You don't
as
have
the
that
accused?
choice. You don't have that choice.
So, because we're going through it with some clubs right now, giving membership a little bit extra power is creating division, 100%. Right now, as we speak. And putting this in their hands obviously worries me a little bit of the condition of some of these clubs as I continue to work with them. I can see the reasoning behind it, but given the circumstances, as I have been going through the last month with some of these clubs, I would not want a very large club coming to me petitioning. It needs to start at the board, in my opinion, for chartered clubs.
But if they have to have a cause, they have to have a valid business level cause. They've been, stealing money. They've been, doing acts like that.
Well, I would assume that's a whole board issue then.
Well, that's true, but maybe the board's in on it.
then you need to come see
Well,
us right
exactly,
away.
well, exactly, exactly. But there needs to be a process for that.
Jack?
It's just my 2 cents.
Yeah, but Jack, just out of curiosity, so I'm part of a club. I have a problem with the person. I would probably go to my board first and see how they would help me with that situation or help us with that situation. If they failed, then maybe a way around that, or I don't know. I mean, I don't disagree with what Casey's saying.
So do you have, in your example, do you have is the person you have a problem with a member of the board? Because otherwise you're talking about a member discipline issue. Okay, so it's a member of the board. So would you first not go talk to that member of the board to work out your issue? Okay.
I would try to find somebody on the, I would go to the board itself as a whole
So then
and
does,
ask for help.
okay, so then does this, one of these two ways not work for you?
I just don't think myself as a member has the right to go all the way and get rid of this person without going through those steps.
I agree with that. Did these steps not accommodate that?
Jack, just in my experience, you want to take that, if I could recommend, take that section out
Which section is that?
about the members, club members. If the process is, and it's been stated here, all discipline sort of follows, it says under other discipline 2.1.1.7, they're subject to the same discipline as any other club member. So it's consistent across the board. Why on this one do you have the members and the others you don't? You know what I mean?
Okay.
We're all members, whether what position you hold, you're still a member. So treat everyone fairly, equally.
Okay. Got to convince the committee. They wrote it.
I'm not comfortable with removing from the membership of the club their ability to remove a director, a board member, if the board themselves are unwilling or unable to do it. I think the club membership should always have some methodology of removing a board member.
That
Now we
goes back to the
can discuss
recommendation,
we can discuss what the hurdle is, but the club membership should always have the ability to remove a member of their board, especially if the board themselves is not willing to do it. But
that goes then into that next section
Yeah.
that we talked about. If the club isn't going to handle it, then I have the ability to do that. The one we just did.
But they may not agree with you. They may not agree with you. You're then putting yourself in a position where if you have a group of frustrated club members who have a legitimate case and the board will not act against that board member and you decide not to act against that board member, what do those members do? There has to be some methodology for the members to do that. It could be a very high hurdle, and I think 25% of the membership, as we have written here, is quite a high bar. That's a very high bar for some large clubs.
Well, that's what we were saying.
Yeah.
This is for cause, Nick. So it's going to be serious. It's not just because I slapped you. It's for cause. Okay, so it's something more serious.
Yeah.
No, that's what I'm saying. So it goes from the board, if they're, maybe the language is, if the board doesn't, then the person who's filing the complaint can escalate it directly to her. But don't put it back amongst the membership. You're just going to cause more chaos, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree.
I do agree. I know it doesn't matter, but I agree.
Well, I'm going to agree too. I'm concerned about a group of troublemakers getting together. I mean, I think that if you have cause and you put it before the board, and then the board cannot handle it, I trust Casey to do that.
I did have one time, I will not get into anything to build a reputation around any club. I had a member reach out to me about an officer. I did some investigation, got my cause, and handled the situation. So it has happened. And I had full evidence and proof behind it. So, I mean, sadly, I have some experience, sadly.
Jack,
Yeah, go ahead.
I guess I would not want to see the membership get involved. I think it would become a free-for-all. People would be choosing sides. I think it would end up with a lot of chaos, and I trust the process as it is, that if the board couldn't make the decision, it goes to the recreation manager, and I'm comfortable with that.
Judy and Kathy, you haven't,
Yeah, I totally agree with what Carol said, and I don't think in this instance we are not giving the members an opportunity to state their problem or whatever's going on. We certainly are. It's just going about it in the right way and not causing chaos.
okay, and Paul, I think I haven't heard from you.
Yeah, just a comment. The parallel in the community is that if enough citizens are upset about something, they get enough signatures on a referendum that's voted on by everyone. We don't really have that process here, and I agree with the comments that it would just be chaos. I think within a club, we don't really have a means to allow people to voice differences like that. And you don't want 1 or 2 or 10 or 20 people, causing that kind of disruption. And the right, I think, way to do that is to go to Casey and let her handle it.
Can I hear comments from the floor, please? Go up to the microphone, sign in, your name and a rec card number, and identify yourself. Thank you.
Deborah Sinelli, 123356. When I was thinking about when you were afraid about the members getting too involved or whatever, if I were in a club and something were happening with the board and there really wasn't anything I could do about it without raising a big ruckus or whatever, there are things. I'd still have choices. I just don't go to the club anymore. I take myself out of that situation if I'm uncomfortable there, and I don't come back until the board members change. And in most clubs, that happens every couple of years anyway, where part of the board changes. So that would, or accept the decision of what the group did and move on. So that's one thing. Can I ask about other things or just this? Okay, so that's my comment about this.
Okay, thank you. So you're saying you'd vote with your feet, is the common way of saying that? Yeah.
Lynn Kellis, 129120. In some of the experience that I've had, the idea of turning it over to the members has really not been a good experience. What you get is a lot of division between the members. You get a group of people who are making the noise and don't like something. Sometimes it's valid, sometimes it might not be valid. But what I had seen was quite a division of the membership. And I believe that the board needs to be responsible for handling those things. And if the board is negligent in doing so, they should be going over to the rec center and having a conversation.
Okay, thank you.
Pam Keiss, 401, 402, president of the Boomers. I would be petrified to think that 2,076 people could have a say. A lot of our members don't even know each other because they belong to our club for one reason or another. So I just don't think members would be a good thing to get involved. I just think it would be a beehive of mess. But that's just our club.
Okay, thank you.
Catherine Haas, 139683. I'm the treasurer of the Zymergy Club. I have witnessed meetings where we have allowed the membership to go off on a tangent somewhere instead of following the rules of what's going on. And pretty soon we have a division in the club. Now it's not going in that way right now, but it could have escalated into something ugly. Membership has a choice. Every year, officers are elected. If the membership does not like what the officers are doing, they've talked to the board, they've talked to Casey, that usually takes a couple of months. By then, it's time for elections. Then run for the office. I believe we should stick with a format that is consistent. Thank you.
Thank you.
Lynn Kellis, 129120. I just wanted to clarify something, and I'm in no way saying the membership shouldn't have an opinion. We're there because of them, and their opinion counts, and it's very important. We have a suggestion box that works for us, and it's kept a lot of the hostility down because we're able to talk to them one-on-one and get that worked out. Just stating that I think that within the board, that determination should be.
Okay, thank you, Lynn. Okay, and thank you for your input on this topic. Appreciate it. So, Nick, go ahead.
Yeah, I'll just say I consider myself slapped.
Okay, so with that, we'll take the recommendation to remove any reference to removal of club directors by club members, or club board officers by members, or club whatever. Yeah, that whole section, we'll take that out, and any other references there might be. And then if in the future, whoever's doing it, they may want to put it back in. If things change between now and then, they can do it then. But for now, we'll take it out. Yeah, Paul.
Just a point of clarification. We've talked about members, officers, and directors. I think I understand that we mean board members to include all of the above.
That's correct. Yeah, we will make that change as well.
Okay, great, thank you.
I have one other question.
Oh, stop it, Maria.
Sorry. 2.1.1.4 Chartered Club Officer Discipline Procedure. Can we put a line in there like we did for the club members that said it could escalate? It doesn't have to necessarily follow verbal, same thing. Just be consistent.
Okay, sure. It's so that basically what we do is under 2.1.1.4 say that in certain wording to the effect of in certain instances steps may be accelerated or something to that effect. And we'll do that in every instance where we have something like that. Same thing if the officer is removed by the recreation manager too. Okay, so the next section we're going to look at is section 3 on page 46. I have to wait for it to repaginate. There we go, 46. Chartered club discipline. This is just as with the officer or now board member discipline, this is a new section as well, because as I said earlier, the only option available to the rec center was to remove a club's charter, so that we got some intermediate steps. So chartered club discipline, section 3 of Article 5. Chartered clubs are held to a high standard of behavior as they represent the association, other chartered clubs, and all card holders. Chartered clubs shall present themselves in a socially acceptable and responsible manner. The behaviors and actions of club members reflect on the club and association. Chartered club members shall comply with and support association governing documents, especially the RR&Ps and chartered club bylaws. Disciplinary actions will be taken by the recreation manager when chartered club bylaws or RR&Ps have been violated, individuals have threatened the safety of themselves or others, individuals are abusive or create turmoil, disruption, or dissension among club members, between clubs in the association, individuals are abusive to association staff or management. We've had to add this line in every case because that's why we have the Be Kind program. One of the reasons our staff was getting abused. When the actions of a member are deemed by the association to be detrimental to the association's reputation, standing, or status, I think it should be a club, not a member. The chartered club officers of the chartered club, and this will be changed to it'll be board directors of the chartered club subject to discipline must be notified in writing by the recreation manager within 5 business days of the decision to initiate disciplinary action. The infractions and actions must be documented in recreation manager records, including Form CR16, and copies forwarded to the chartered club's president, general manager, and chartered club's committee chair. The disciplinary procedures. First occurrence. Verbal warning to the chartered club's board from the recreation manager sharing details of the incidents and violations. The warning must be delivered with the message that this is a verbal warning, is the first step in a multi-step process, and there will only be one verbal warning. And this is where we'll add the extra language that says things may be accelerated if it's particularly egregious or whatever. Second occurrence, written warning from the recreation to the club's officers, club's board, documenting the details of the incidents and violations. Subsequent occurrences, written notice from the recreation manager of temporary suspension of the club will be provided to the club board within 48 hours of disciplinary action being decided. Second and subsequent occurrences begin accumulating from the date of the first disciplinary action, regardless of any intermediary corrective actions or accommodations. The chartered club board may appeal the ruling by submitting the Form CR16A to the recreation manager. The request will be forwarded to the general manager. Further disciplinary action requests by the recreation manager will be forwarded to the general manager with a copy of the disciplinary actions to date. An appeal will not pause any suspension until, until a ruling is issued. Club rights and privileges will not continue until the ruling is final. So if the club is suspended, the club is suspended. They can't continue on with their behavior. The appeal will be heard at a scheduled meeting with the recreation manager, the chartered club's committee chair, the chartered club board, and other individuals approved by the recreation manager. The president or officer designee of the chartered club being disciplined shall present their case. The ruling will be made based on majority consensus after the club board members have left the room. The recreation manager will forward the appeal ruling to the club board. The general manager may suspend the club's activities for no more than 60 days. Club termination, see 3.3.13, revocation of a club's charter below, or suspension of more than 60 days may be recommended by the general manager to the governing board. Revocation of a club's charter. A club's charter may be revoked upon the recommendation of the general manager and with the approval of the governing board. Reasons for revoking a club's charter include, but are not limited to, membership declines below required minimum membership number, non-compliance with the association's rules and policies, irreconcilable conflict among club members. This is such a, there we go, creating or engaging in activities that project the club and or the association in an undesirable or embarrassing position as deemed by the association, violation of federal, state, or local government statutes and ordinances, violation of IRS rules, and see association bylaw 8.04, 8.4.3 for process of revocation. Okay, so that's the club discipline. Any discussion from the committee members?
Jeff.
Except Maria.
Sorry.
Go ahead, Maria.
Okay, so this section, the first part's a little confusing to me because we talk about disciplinary action to be taken by the rec manager when. And then we're talking about a person or people. But a person or people we've addressed in the front of the section already. So I'm like, why is this here? How is this different than what we've already talked about? Well, it's different if the chartered club itself as a whole entity did something against the association, illegal, all that other stuff. Can this just be condensed as sort of a introduction to the disciplinary section that says chartered clubs can be disciplined as a whole, and here's as a whole, and then each member? Because I think it's just redundant here.
It's redundant for a reason, though. It's because there are minor differences in how each of these are handled. So, plus, people tend to only go to one spot when they're looking for something, we've learned. So if it's got to be in that spot, or else they won't see it. So that's
I've never truly suspended a club, so thank goodness. Not to say that I haven't used the words, but I get where you're coming from. I get where we're both coming from. I don't know if, I don't want to test the waters for those of you out there. But I don't know if we have to kind of wait till this happens to see how it works or what the scenario is.
I think, and correct me if I'm wrong here, committee, but I think the reason this section is in here is that there's always been the threat that a club could have its charter revoked, but it was never documented well anywhere as to what had to happen in order for, what did they have to do so badly that their charter gets revoked? And I think it's fair to have this defined in here in terms of what the process is as well. And a club is its members too. So yeah, maybe we should look at, referencing members in this section, but a club is its members.
Yeah, I agree. If you read each bullet though, right? If the individuals are abusive to association, staff, or management, if they're abusive or create turmoil, if threaten the safety of themselves, these are all the things we've addressed as individual club members, presidents, board members. Yeah, the individual behavior will be disciplined, but the chartered club itself? No, we've disciplined the individual. It's separate.
No, but let's say you've got a club that, a relatively small club that is totally misbehaving, and it's the behavior of the individuals.
So
but as a group, as an organized group.
Perfect. So then change the language that states the group, not just individual, because the way it's reading is one person. Okay.
Yeah, I think this needs to stay in here because there could be enough members of a club that are misbehaving and the board does not take proper action. You have to have some method of disciplining that entire club.
But it's the behavior of more than one person. That's what we have to clarify.
So it's the collective.
Correct.
Okay, good. Any other comments? Yeah, Nick?
Just a minor one on the middle bullet point there. And then before we get to 3.1, are we missing an or at the end? Or dissension among club members between clubs or the association?
Yes.
And Jack, one other thing is the only person that can initiate that, the rec center manager is the only person who can initiate that, correct?
Yes. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, Paul?
Another very minor point, 3.3.13.2.6, second to last line there, says violation of IRS rules. Well, IRS is federal government, so I don't know that you need to make that distinction. But
I can't scroll as fast as, it's 3.3.13.2.6.
the second to last line
Yeah.
of the section there.
But yeah, I agree. If the club is violating the IRS, but the IRS, this gives the association the option to take action perhaps more quickly than the IRS might.
No, I'm saying that it's actually included in the line
Oh, in the
above,
the one above,
because
okay.
it's a federal
Okay,
government.
you guys
But-
okay with removing that distinction?
But, no, I just want to clarify something. It says local government statutes and ordinances, and it says rules, IRS rules. Is there
Well,
a
it
difference
says
in the language?
Violation of federal, state, or local government statutes. So violation of federal statutes would include the IRS.
It does? Thank you. Good.
Yeah.
Yeah, Nick?
I think, given the history over the last few years with IRS difficulties with some clubs, that keeping it as a separate line is probably a wise thing to do, to make sure that officers know that there are IRS rules and they should be followed as an emphasis rather than just including it above.
I agree with that. Leave it in.
Okay, leave that in. Okay, this concludes Article 5. So before we go on to Article 6, are there any other comments or sections? I mean, you had some, let's hear your comments on the rest of Article 5. Please.
Deborah Sinelli, 123356. Most of these are just yes and no answers, but there's one that I really need clarification on. So, can board members of a club investigate a member for past offenses? I mean, if it comes to light that a new member in our club has, done something that we don't think is right, and that maybe it isn't a person we really that we feel that we need to know more about. Can we investigate? I mean, can we go to Casey and then say, do they have any past infractions in other clubs? No. So you just have to take them carte blanche and go with it.
Yeah.
Okay.
And, we have a lot of members that are part of all the various clubs. If it was that severe, I personally would kind of watch that person on a monthly basis to see if they joined a club, and probably call that, if I could keep up on it. It's not something I can guarantee, but if it's a severe situation, which is probably like less than 1% of her population here, I would bring that person in and remind them of their behavior and how we respect one another.
Okay.
I would hope that's what I could do.
All right. In section 2.1.1.5.1. 21151. In our group, we have a second vice president. Now, that second vice president happens to be in charge of membership, and she's kind of our parliamentarian, okay? But according to this, she would not be included. So I guess my question, can we add second vice president?
But she's a member of your board?
Yes.
So then by changing everything from officers to board members, that addresses your question.
And even in this section?
We'll change it,
Okay.
yeah,
right.
it's in Article 5, right?
And yes.
Yes, okay, we'll change it everywhere in Article 5.
2.1.1.9, can a rec manager start or initiate the removal of an officer? Could Casey do that? She's the rec manager, so.
Yes, I think there's a section for that.
I mean, if things got bad enough and the board wasn't doing anything about it, and could Casey initiate?
Paragraph 2.1.2 is titled Club Officer Disciplinary Action Initiated by the Recreation Manager.
All right,
Does that answer your question?
yes.
Okay.
Can you remove a 2.1.1.6? Can you remove a board member due to ineffectiveness or for health reasons? This has kind of happened with our group this year. And it's been kind of painful. And she's finally just kind of, she's gotten sick, and I'm sorry for that. But in the interim, it's been hard. So we've had somebody else step in just until they actually take over the office come the first of the year. But if we had seen it earlier, could we have taken steps to have that person removed and somebody else brought in?
You know, I think you would treat it like you would any personnel type situation. You know, if the person is not able to do their job, and you guys correct me if I'm wrong, if I speak out of turn, but if they're unable to do the job, then that would be for cause. And if they are just, you know, because they're incapacitated or ill in some way, maybe counseling them out or counseling to get you know, help, you know, might
Okay.
be a way to handle it. But yeah, I would say that a board has the right to manage itself and the club. I mean, you got to do what's right for the club.
Okay, and last thing,
That is, you guys, I'm not speaking out of turn, am I? Yeah, okay.
way back up at the top, when we first started, it was 1.12 and then numbers 1 through 4. Do these happen before or after 1.11? Because it seemed to me that when we started this, at the very top of 1.11, there was something, I think it was 1.11, or it was stating what we need to do. But then when we got down to 1.12, it was, I don't know, I got confused.
So the first part of it is you got to, talks about what qualifies as a disciplinary action, what has to happen. And then once you've gathered the disciplinary information, then you go to the process to discipline the person. So it's you gather the information first, decide if there's action is necessary, and then you come down, you know, counsel with the recreation manager. And then once you decide you're going to move forward, then you go through the next section.
Okay, but go down to 1.12.
Yeah, these are the procedures. So-
Okay, it seems like that's a reiteration of what's up above. At least to me, it reads that way, so.
So the way to,
But they aren't, they're separate things?
they are separate things. The first step in any discipline is deciding what can a person be disciplined for. That's what 1.1 covers. 1.2 says, okay, now you got to, once you've agreed on the above, there's a formal complaint, and then there's steps on how to do that, and there's steps of what the complaint must contain, and then you consult with the recreation manager, and if you decide to move forward, which is 1.11, then you notify the person, and then after you've notified the person, then you go into 1.12, which says, okay, here's the whole process. Does that make sense? Okay. Okay.
I hate to say this, but in order to really understand it, you have to go through it.
Jean Phillips, 117529. And on the most recent section, we were talking about killing whole in charters. In there, it said 2 members with irreconcilable differences. You could kill a whole club for that, or is this now falling into, because it did imply that if 2 people in the club couldn't get their act together, you would cancel the whole club. And that seems like that should be something that should have been handled a lot earlier and maybe doesn't even need to be mentioned here. I can see where if you have a 50-person club and you got 25 of them rampaging one way and 25 rampaging another way, I could see irreconcilable difference between groups of members, but maybe it goes back to if you include groups of individuals who are members instead of just the individual member.
What number was that again?
I did not write it down. It's the last section we talked about in canceling.
The chartered
Charter.
clubs, chartered clubs discipline, right?
Yeah. And so I think if you do add, I think that I wrote this down, and then the later discussion was about groups of individuals or groups of members. And if you add that, that'll probably take care of my concern. But I've been in clubs where I walked with my feet, voted with my feet, because of the differences in people.
We were going to replace the word individual with members, I believe.
A group of members.
Yeah, a collective or group.
Right, okay. And then very first part of section 2, so before you get to 2.1, blah, 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 it talks about individual, and I think they're actually referring to officers, but I want to make sure. And I think then it should say officers instead of, so it's at the very 2 point, of what we started with today. Yeah, member discipline. And it's where the board, oh, I didn't write down enough of the number, did I? It's the very first section in.
Yeah, it's the bullet points under 2 before you get to 2.1.
Yeah.
It talks of individuals, and I think it should talk of board members.
Yes, exactly. You'll find it eventually.
So what page are we on?
I think it's further lower number.
40.
All right, scroll down just a little bit, I think, to club officer discipline, and then individuals have threatened the safety of others. So is that an individual? You're saying we're going to discipline the officer because an individual, or is it the officer who's
The officer is the individual.
Right. I think you need to clarify that.
Okay, so they had that say the officer has threatened the safety.
Right, right, and same with the next bullet
Okay.
point. Yeah.
Okay.
And then I have more homework to do for my questions. All right, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, my poor computer's lagging. Okay, this is Article 6, allocation of space. We'll go through this. Assignment of space. Space used by chartered clubs is determined by association bylaws, Article 8, chartered clubs, Code 0.1 and Code 8.01 and Code 8.03 and Association Policy FAO 6, and is dependent upon effective space utilization, active participation by club members, and space requirements for club general membership meetings. While all facilities and programs within the physical confines of the association are available to the general membership, Regular participation in some activities may be contingent upon membership in a chartered club. In these specific situations, the association has delegated full-time operating responsibility to respective clubs in a conscious effort to provide low-cost programs in a safe environment. In those facilities where participation is contingent upon club membership, the rationale is based on the need to provide a safe and orderly designated or shared club space. This approach is intended to establish a comprehensive leisure program and protect the members, the association, and club assets. Chartered clubs are to be used by the association's members for the express purpose of pursuing chartered club activities as defined in paragraph 1 of the introduction on page 9. At no time is exclusivity or ownership of a club-utilized space implied or assigned to a club or its members. The association retains exclusive ownership of all properties, facilities, and related assets within assigned club spaces. Clubs use the space at the pleasure of the association. This may seem like an obvious statement, but you would be surprised how many clubs get very territorial and parochial about the space that they use, and they actually believe that they own it. See also Article 9, Classes, Contracts, Equipment, Facilities on page 62. We'll discuss that next month. Scheduling and reservations. The responsibility for scheduling the association's facilities and coordinating activities rests with the Recreation Manager's Office. Chartered club presidents must submit a Form CR6, the club activity calendar, to the Facility Scheduling Office on or about May 1 for the following year, which is defined as January 1 through December 31. The Form CR6 identifies regularly scheduled chartered club activities and meetings. The term regular is defined to mean the general membership and board meetings that are consistently held on the same days of the week or month throughout the calendar year. It does not include club committees or other sub-elements of a chartered club. Clubs with designated or shared space must use that space for board meetings when space allows. So this is done so that meetings can be open. If you have them in somebody's house or at a church or someplace else, it's less likely that they will be considered open or actually attended. Clubs may request a change to their regular schedule by submitting an updated Form CR6 or Form CR14 for individual requests or changes. Requests will be evaluated on facility availability basis. A Form CR14 must be submitted to the scheduling office for each facility space request after the CR6 has been submitted on May 1, including changes and cancellations by the club president or designated officer. So you, as a club president, you fill out and you submit the CR6. That gets you set up for the whole year. If you have a change to anything, you submit the CR14, which is a change to that existing reservation, including if you cancel it. The association has the right to preempt or usurp a chartered club's reserved space if that space is required for association use. When a rental fee is applicable for use of a facility by a chartered club, a facility reservation confirmation must be completed by a cardholder applicant at the time of the request. Reservation information will be recorded and kept on file. Chartered clubs may be responsible for paying for certain supplies and/or equipment provided by the association for confirmed meetings and events. See club price sheet available at scwclubs.com. The club president is responsible for ensuring all facility reservations are correct. Reservations not canceled at least 30 days in advance of the scheduled date or are no-call, no-show to reservations made by a club will result in loss of a deposit, if applicable, and a no-show charge to the club at the then current rate. That's a rule that's been in place for a very long time. And that's Article 6. Any questions on Article 6? Oh, Casey, go.
Well, I'm starting to become an expert in the scheduling department. So on 1.4 for the CR6, you say it's for facility scheduling, oh, I'm sorry, for regular scheduled charter club activities and meetings. It also includes their 2 free socials on there. Okay? And then
That'll be added.
And then on 1.8, is this just for member use? I mean, we do have rules that only presidents and one designated officer, board member, can make reservation changes. So when a rental fee is applicable, this looks like it's more of something if somebody wants to do something on their own, not really chartered club related.
But what if a chartered club wants to do more than their 2 free socials?
Then it has to be done between the president or the delegated officer.
But won't they be charged for it?
It could be.
They could have a rental fee.
It could be. It's just the way it's written doesn't really
you-
look like it's for charter clubs.
Oh, it needs to be completed by a, not card holder, but by a designated board member.
Yeah, president and designated board. I think we're just going to stick with board member as,
Yeah,
just to keep it clear throughout the whole document.
okay, got it. Any other comments, questions? Maria?
I do have a
No.
question for, yeah. Casey,
Judy?
just on 1.4.1, is there a limit that you have for the clubs as for how many they can submit on a year, you know, when you're starting out the calendar year in things or not? No minimum of 3 general meetings a year.
Yeah, so this year we went back to the old way and we entered all the club's general meetings and board meetings first. Then we went all the way back and then went in numerical order that it was turned in and put in all the special events after that. Because prior to that, clubs were displacing other clubs' general membership meeting, which was not the right thing to do.
Lynn, 129120?
Yes, good job. I just had a comment regarding what Casey had said. I would really recommend that you consider putting the club president and/or their designated board member as one designated board member. Otherwise, you're going to have everybody coming in and making changes and one not knowing what the other's doing.
Okay,
And
that's
I
good.
think that's what because they have to sign document
Yeah.
for that, and I think that's what it says. I'll double check, and so it's consistent. Or we can change ours, either or.
We can change the wording in here. That's no big deal.
And Deborah Sinelli, 123357. We had a situation this year, Casey, thank goodness, helped work it out. But I had submitted last year the dates that we needed, and the room for our board meetings, not our general membership meetings, was supposed to be in the Pueblo room. As far as I knew, that was good. We didn't find out till recently that that had been changed. And we were supposed to be holding our board members in the room where all of our members are at the same time. And that's not really conducive for a board member meeting, to be amongst all the general membership stuff. And also, I guess I was never notified or my second in command was never notified that that had been changed. Because had we known that we were supposed to stay in our room where we meet normally, a red flag would have gone up and I would have said something earlier. But thanks to Casey, it did get worked out. So when changes like that are made, who's supposed to let the clubs know?
Casey?
Yeah, the scheduler that makes those changes. So your situation, I don't know why it didn't get communicated to you, and I apologize then, I'll apologize now publicly. So I don't have an answer for you, but the right thing to do would have been to call you and have a conversation about why there was no need for you to move. It wasn't a disruption at the time. So honestly, I don't have an answer for her, but we did just have a case, same exact thing happened. And I don't blame that president for being upset. And it should have been communicated and it wasn't. So we're gonna make sure that we work on that. Laura is there. We have the lead position posted. I've been filling in for what I can as well, we're trying to figure out better way to detail these reports. I have noticed that the Theater West will be on the header, and it's really for creative stitchers. So we're trying to clean a lot of that stuff up as well. So it's fun when you dive in and learn new things.
But I think the key point here is that that's a process that is owned by the scheduling department. So, yeah.
Jack?
Yes.
I've, under 1.4.1, I'm very happy to hear from Casey that you've gone back to the old way of scheduling. I think in fairness to all clubs, every club should have the opportunity to schedule their required meetings and board meetings before other clubs book for other reasons. So thank you for addressing that.
Do we want to add that? Do you want to put it in black and white?
I think it's fine if you have it as a policy, an operational policy.
Okay.
Yeah. And Connie's hand hurts.
Oh, jeez.
No, I think it's fine as an operational policy.
Okay, sorry, Paul, can I ask one more
Yeah,
question?
no, go ahead.
So we have a minimum of 3 general membership meetings, and we have clubs that are meeting well over that, which are actually, it's understandable. I can understand why if these big clubs need to kind of circulate through their membership. They have 6 to 8 or sometimes 10 general membership meetings. So there's no maximum, there's only a minimum. I can understand conducting business for very large clubs, kind of have to do that. We're just kind of in we made a new little policy that after the 3 general membership meetings, the clubs will be charged. Who's asking? Oh, no, this is new.
So the question was, has that been
No.
posted yet?
I need to know, do I need to go through the governing board to ask that question? Because that's going to raise the cost to some of these clubs.
I believe that's an operational issue, and you can go ahead and do it.
Okay.
And if I'm wrong, I'll take the heat.
It'll be the fee that is on the appendices online. It's the same as if you were doing an event.
So Casey, may I clarify though, you will go through all of the clubs and make sure they have 3 scheduled before you'll even allow another club to do a 4th, 5th, 6th, whatever?
That's a good question. But
Because-
I mean, I did do that with computers. We did end up doing that. And Norm's here, so that's why I'm talking to him. Because if these clubs are overtaking, it's Palm Ridge and Social Hall, And we
Yeah.
have clubs that have regular scheduled activities that have been honored and grandfathered for years. And I'd hate to take that away from them who have been here since the 80s and the 90s. So we've got to start limiting and controlling, and they need to be conducting their business maybe in a better fashion in one meeting. In the past, it only used to be 2 hours. I know that was just kind of a policy that was put in place way before me when I was in Dory's position. But I mean, it's something we can kind of talk about. Some clubs do it during their normal time, so it doesn't affect them whatsoever. But these larger clubs that I don't mind either that there's food being served, cookies, danishes, whatever. You gotta draw them in somehow, understandable. But overusing general membership meetings as a social is getting a little overabused.
Hey, Paul?
Yeah, in the past, I think there's been a little confusion on what the order is that the requests, the CR6s are received. We've had people out there at 3 and 4 in the morning waiting, to hand in the stuff, thinking that was the way to, get a good place in line. In another case, a person took it at 8 in the morning, which was understood to be the sign of the early time, and they wound up being 47th in line. So, I don't have strong feelings either way, but obviously people need to know what the rules are. And I think going back to the old way tells me something, but I'm not sure what it is.
I think the old way is a more fair way. We're new here now, so we can revisit that. And I mean, there's officers in the house now, you all, Pam, you didn't get to experience that then. And sometimes the husbands did it for the lady officers, that seemed to be a common thing. But they would line up here, and then we would take everybody and number them, stamp them, and no longer accepted. At that time, we didn't accept emails. There are times where Clay Club says 8:01, Creative Stitcher says 8:01, the person that turned it in at 8:01, who's 2, 3, and 4? So fair question. I'm open for going back to the old way.
But what?
Yep. Yep. What? The numbers are not consistent that way. I can tell you that much. Sure.
Okay, so
I guess the question is,
Sorry.
what is the current method? What's going to happen next May?
I have to open that discussion with our new scheduler and whomever else we hire.
okay, so I think it's stay tuned.
Stay tuned.
Stay tuned. Okay, anything else from the committee? Okay, any comments on Article 6 from the attendees here? Okay, that was easy. Okay, any last committee member comments? Judy? Carol? Kathy?
We're going to be able to finish it up in December?
That's the goal.
Okay.
That's the goal. Connie? Nick?
Just a couple. One is to say that I'm an officer of a club which did have a move, or a partial move, because of a preemption, if you like, by the association of the use of our facilities, which was when the Army Band was playing in Beardsley Park, and we received, I think, at least 6, probably 8 weeks notification that it was going to happen, and the facilities staff were all on standby to help us with the fact that we'll be in a different room that day. At the time when our members were arriving, there were facility staff out there as well, just to make sure things were going on. So it's, I think when people don't get notified, my suggestion is that it's probably an exception rather than what normally happens. And just one other point, which is on the 8 a.m. on May the 1st deadline. How about picking picking them out at random, in a random order from everything that had been received before 8 a.m. on May the 1st. And
I know
anybody
who to
who
look
comes
at.
in, anything that comes in after 8 a.m. on May the 1st goes to the bottom of the pile. And we'll put ours in next week.
Okay, thank you, Nick. Maria?
No comment.
Paul? Connie? Casey? Sorry.
I do, sadly. No, it's just a reminder that on December 4th and 5th, we're doing our upgrade for our scheduling software, so we are going to be closed. So if you have anything up and coming that you need to come see myself or Laura in to update your reservation, please do so ASAP. And then to the actually communication piece, when we get this upgrade, the leads will have, and supervisors will have access to see what's up and coming with details, and they'll be able to help us as well. So the communication's gonna take it to a whole nother level because they will have access to the tool.
Okay, thank you. Pam?
I would like to reply to Nick about the May thing. That would be fine if, we have one happy hour a month, we have one special event. It's not an event, it's just an activity. But we have to fight for that spot in May because we don't fit in our clubhouse. 6% of our membership fits in our clubhouse. So we have to pay in order to do that, and we have to stand in line in order to get it. If it's given to us ahead of time, go for it. But we have to have somewhere to go, and if you're just going to do them by random, that's you're going to destroy the club.
Okay, thank you for that. Last call. Anything else? Anybody? Sure. Let's let Deborah come up.
I heard somebody back behind me say that this was painful. It is painful. Change is painful. And you guys have done an immense amount of work to try and make this worded and fair for all the clubs. And so I commend you for that. I would not want to be in your shoes. And if I were sitting out there complaining, then I would say, I guess I need to be on the board so that it can be done differently or whatever. But I don't have any desire to do that. So thank you very much for all that you have done. And thank you.
Thank you, Deborah. Robert? I don't hear him on the.
Okay. Linda Kuman, rec number 117881, says she has to leave, but would like to have Jack respond to whether or not the committee has finalized the language regarding how they count the percentage of participation.
We changed the language so that it was presented last month. I could find it, and let me find it.
You passed it. Have 50%.
Okay. Chartered Club monthly membership target participation rate of 50% as measured by association software called ClubTrack, averaged over a 12-month period. So that means that if you're going to, Nick, maybe you can explain this since I had such a hard time last time.
Basically, every
I recognize
month,
my limitations, okay?
every month, you should have 50% of your membership participating.
Even
So
if
half
70%
of your members have to go once a month,
so
on
70%
average.
of your members leave for the summer.
On average.
On average. So you can have 75% for 3 months and 25% for, however many months.
But that's by individual, right? It's not if
That's individuals.
75
Yeah.
people go to an event, and then the same 75 go next week, it still only counts as 75.
That's correct, yes. 75
Right.
individuals. Of the total, half of your total membership must participate every month. And it's a target. It's not a rule, it's a target.
It's not a requirement,
Yeah.
it's a target.
Because for one thing, we have no way to measure it. We have no way in an automated fashion.
We have ClubTrack. That's as close as we can get.
That's,
It can be derived from that, yes.
Yes.
this is Jean Phillips, 117529. I've written my name down before. This was my question last month. This should be something that could be a formula that people could understand. And when I asked ClubTrack folks to do a report for me, which they kindly did to see where we were tracking, their calculation did not quite match the verbiage here, which I'm not sure why. And I understood from Casey last month that they spend a lot of time prepping those participation reports. And I think we ought to be able to get to a formula. You got club with so many members, that's so per month. They've got so many months they're open. So you should be able to turn this into math so that the computer can do it for you. And then that frees up some of your time. And people should be able to read it here and say, okay, where are we falling down on getting our participation? I mean, that just seems like a lot of work for the rec center to calculate this. And yes, it's just a goal or just a whatever, but I think it's helpful to be able to look at it yourself because we get our ClubTrack reports and we could say, oh, man, we need to have some activity in whatever month to kick it up. And also be able to explain to it, folks, that just because our summer months are low doesn't mean we're going to get booted. So that's my input. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Robert, for bringing that. Okay, let's just, I guess that's it. Last call?
Yes.
Yes.
Hate to beat this to death. I think this group needs to have a discussion about the purpose of requiring participation. Now, I get the facilities, and when you're comparing clubs, facility usage, that's one issue. If this is somehow a condition of keeping the club open, why are we doing that? Why are we telling people they have to come more often? I'm not sure I understand that.
We are not doing that. Participation, this whole thing started 5 years ago. And at that time, there was a tremendous amount of requests for larger space. Clubs had grown and they needed to move into bigger spaces. And it occurred to those at that time that we didn't have a way of measuring space or a way of allocating space other than just kind of, a finger in the air sort of thing. So there was a mandate that said, got to have participation numbers and we got to have utilization. They said we have to have utilization numbers. So that to me says how many people are in a room filling that room to its capacity and utilizing that space during a particular period of time. What we got was participation numbers. Participation is not utilization. So what we're what we're saying is we want to have clubs participate. We want to have them participate, but we're not going to go out and cut down clubs and annihilate them and anything like that. That's not at all what this is about. The clubs are the heart and soul of Sun City West. It would be insane to just clear cut a whole bunch of clubs and do away with them. That would be crazy. That's not the intent of this at all. But you can't manage something if you don't measure it. Right now, our only measurement is participation. That's why we had Nick's space utilization requirements working group to help figure that out.
But space utilization is an entirely different subject from participation.
Agreed.
And why we require, encourage, whatever, a certain number for participation, I don't understand. Now, my recollection of how this came up was that your predecessor seemed to think or had information that some clubs were padding their numbers for whatever reason, I don't remember. So she decided 75% participation was required. And of course, it didn't go anywhere. It wasn't defined, et cetera, et cetera. But I still go back. I get utilization, no question. Participation, a requirement. It's good to know, but I haven't heard the word requirement used in a coherent way with respect to participation.
Well, and I think that you are correct that the number of 75% came from somewhere. I don't know the basis for that. And yes, there were clubs that were significantly padding their roles. There is a relationship between participation and club space, but right now that's the only tool that we have to figure out if it's being used effectively. And even then, that's still more of a swag. It's not the definitive answer. That's why I don't like using it to make that final decision that says a club, you can no longer use this space because your participation numbers are low. That's only one part of it. It's not a full, complete measurement.
I agree. It's a target. It's only one metric that's used. And I agree with what Jean said. It's a number that helps the club. If you don't have half of your members participating at some point during the year, you need to be doing something different in the club to encourage them to come and be active and be part of the club. And that's what this number is. Half your members need to participate in some club activity during the year.
Well, I agree with you to some extent. However, I ran the numbers for the full year for a club with 1,000 members. About 50% during the year, or during the, when everybody's here. In the summer, it's about 25%. So there's no way we're going to get to 50% for the year average. But,
And it's a target.
Yes, I
It
agree.
used to
I
be
agree.
75% hard rule. It is now 50%, and it's a target.
Yes, I agree. No problem with the target.
Okay, so so just in listening to the conversation, so it sounds like we have two different views of going on, and I can see why clubs are a little frustrated. If you have large clubs, it's impossible to get 50% of your members to every month to be somewhere. At the same time, I'm hearing, well, we're doing the numbers, so it's for the space. Is that space being utilized? So couldn't we just clarify the language a little bit to say, when we're requiring that participation, it's if you have a space and if you want to maintain it, this is what we want to see, specific just for that. Because to their points, who cares how many times someone goes to a club? If they want to go once a year, that's great. They're going once a year.
So that is the reason why Nick led the Space Utilization Requirements Working Group and why those recommendations have been forwarded by the governing board to the general manager to deal with, to address. Deborah.
What is the formula? We haven't seen it yet. I'm going to make our numbers really easy. we have more than 50 members, but say we have 50 members in our group, okay, and 30 come every week. So are they adding the 30, 30, 30, 30, which is 120, dividing
No.
it by 4 and
No,
30?
no, I'll say it again. Individual members must attend, half of your individual members
Have to
must
attend at least
attend
once a year
one activity per month.
per month.
So in her example, 50 members, she has to have 25 people show up every month.
Yeah.
Different. But they don't have
25
to show up,
different people.
but they
Yes.
don't have to show up every week
No.
to average out for the
No.
month.
No, they just have to have 25 unique individuals.
Okay, that doesn't happen to us in the summertime.
Doesn't
I'm
happen
not-
to many clubs in the
But you'll
summertime.
also notice there's a sentence in there about clubs in the summer.
Well, it's not that we're not inactive.
No,
because
it's
it
average.
says
It's average.
inactive.
It's averaged over the year. So in the busy months, you might have of your 100 members or whatever, you might have, and we're expecting on average 50 a month. During the busy times of the year, you might have 75, you might have 80, you might have 75, and then in the summer you might have 40, you might have 30. It's over the year. There's a general rule over the year. It's not that if in July you drop below 50%, Casey is going to shut you down.
Oh, I know that. I know, because we've talked about this in great detail.
Yeah.
But it is very, very, very confusing. And what you just said on how we figure it up, that should be the language in that.
Well,
Yeah,
that's what it
that's
says. It says a month.
No, it doesn't.
No, I think what I'm hearing her say is provide an example. For example, if you have 50 members, 25 members per month, individual members must show up. It's just very basic, simple language.
And then how is that averaged?
And then it's averaged. But to your point as well, if you have 50 members, you get 25 at your high peak. And let's say your summer, you only get 10, you won't average 50% of the year. And I think what I'm hearing them say is they get anxiety over not meeting this number, which doesn't amount to anything.
Nobody should be getting anxiety over these numbers. They are target numbers. They are numbers that we look at, we try to measure it, but they are not the end-all and be-all numbers for deciding who gets what space. I mean, we've admitted that these numbers are not utilization numbers. They are participation numbers. They are not the same thing.
And if you were to take in utilization numbers, you would take into account how many people can actually be in a club. I know she's got limits. I have almost 300 members in Rip and Sew. I have 17 seats for sewing machines, 8 seats for sergers, 5 cutting tables. If every one of those is in use, I'm coming up against my fire code limit, well, not even near a fire code limit, actually, which might be 53 if we were all standing in there like this. So we'll never have that level of activity in our club. We aren't like Boomers where you have the big space and you can have a lot of people. So that fire department and the number of seats available, I know it will get complicated and I see why they take time to figure it out. But if really the long-term intent was utilization, is that going to see a change in the future, you think, once we get this kind of settled out?
That is what Nick's working group put together in their final report.
And is that available for us
That's
to view?
available online. It's in board docs. You have to go to the meeting. I think it was June. Nick, June of 2023?
Yeah, we delivered the document at the end of June, and it was discussed in the first meetings, I think, in September and October. Properties committees discussed it as well, so it'll be in the attachments for the Chartered Clubs and Properties Committee meetings around September, October.
Under the board meeting stuff or under the chartered clubs?
Under
stuff?
Chartered Clubs and under the Properties Committee. I think
Okay.
it's probably on the board meeting too when it got
Yeah.
moved to them.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
So, but you're absolutely right.
But yeah, board docs, and then I get lost in there. So.
Utilization is a very complex topic.
Yeah.
Very complex. And there are so many multivariables at the same time that have to be addressed. That's why Nick's report, his working group was so intense in getting it done. So, people should not be getting anxiety over this 50% number. It's a number. It's one of many things. If a club is having trouble with its membership, talk to Casey. Casey's great about making sure that people continue their clubs, their space. She'll work with everybody. I mean, again, people should not be getting upset about this.
Okay.
Jack?
And okay, last one, Paul, and then I'm going to really adjourn the meeting.
Yes. This is just totally for information. If you have someone in your club that is good with Excel, Microsoft Excel, you can take the report you get from ClubTrack and you can identify the unique rec card numbers in that file for that month, and that will give you one number you need to compute participation.
Okay, and with that, it is 3:46 p.m. and I adjourn this meeting. Thank you all for attending.